Bum, 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 bum. Hey, everybody. Come on in here. Come on. We're going to talk about the president's proposal for immigration. It's fairly fresh news. I like to get it while it's fresh. Everybody's going to be talking about it tomorrow. Normally I would have waited for the morning, but I just wanted to jump all over this. You caught me live. Those of you who are usually on a different schedule, it's time to hoist our beverages. This beverage is a full container of liquid optimism. Tonight, I'm going to give you an optimistic, to the point of humorous, description of what could be ahead. It might not be. Don't know if it will be, but it could be. So it'd be a good thing to think about before you go to bed. But first, we'll drink to optimism. That's good optimism. So if you've been paying attention at all, you know that there's been a big negotiation going on between the Republicans and the Democrats and President Trump on the issue of immigration. And the big items are the wall and chain migration and the lottery and DACA and visas. So the president has made a proposal, and I'm going to tell you how close this is to being a really good deal. It's not quite there. There's something that needs to be added to it to tweak it, and then it'll get there. Because remember, a deal needs to make everybody feel a little bit uncomfortable, but not so uncomfortable that they just can't back it in large enough numbers to work out. So here's the first item on President Trump's immigration proposal. And see if, when I'm done with these, it seems to you that there's a deal to be made. And Mexico pays for the wall. All right? I'm setting a pretty high bar here. Just watch. Number one, the president's asking for $25 billion in what he calls a trust fund for border wall system. I don't know the details of a trust fund, but basically the idea, he's asking for something like the complete amount you need for a pretty big wall. Now, the Democrats have already said at one point, yeah, we'll build your darn wall. So we know there's flexibility. Enough flexibility, let's say at least 10 votes worth, which is all the Republicans would need to get something done, in some equivalent in the House. So probably paying for some part of the wall, $25 billion, or maybe they negotiate for a little less. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that seems doable if the other stuff is good. Right? By itself, of course, it wouldn't be, but remember, it's part of the package. So then there's, I'm going to read these out of order. There's eliminating the lottery and repurposing visas. I believe that those things both poll at well over 60%, meaning that it shouldn't be hard to get agreement on something that the country wants, 2-1. So that looks like that can work in some fashion. Maybe they need to tweak it a little bit. Then there's protect the nuclear family, which is their code word for ending chain migration, except apparently for the nuclear family. Now, I believe that also polls at something like 2-1. That's very popular. People are okay with a little bit of chain migration, like a spouse, a mother, a kid, but they're not so okay with the cousins, etc. So probably you can make a deal on something that's got a 2-1 public approval. Now here's the interesting one. This is in Trump's immigration proposal, his actual words. It's path to legal status. Ooh, path to legal status for 1.8 million DACA eligible individuals. As you might imagine, some of his base on the right is already screaming traitor. You said you were going to kick the DACA people out. You've pushed us far enough to say that they can, stay under some conditions, but now you're saying there would be a pathway to legal status? That's just too far. So as is, it might be tough to get that through. But let me suggest a little tweak to it to make it go down a little bit better with everybody. Suppose you provided a pathway to citizenship for the DACA folks, but it's not what people expect it to be. Let's say you've got essentially 3 paths to become a citizen. Number 1, and these are all optional. Number 1 would be the default if you don't pick one or the other. You go to the end of the line so that everybody who's already done the paperwork and they're waiting for years or whatever, they still go ahead of you, and it could take years for you to get through. But you could get through. So that would be a pathway to citizenship. Now, a lot of people are not going to want to wait that long, and there are a lot of folks who have made money, have businesses, have good jobs, etc., and they might want to buy their way closer to the front of the line. Now, if they were to buy their way, they would effectively be paying a tax that other people don't have to pay, a penalty, if you will. So the people who would be mad that they would go to the front of the line would be less mad if they paid a stiff, let's say $10,000 per person to buy their way into early citizenship. But here's the fun part. Let's say that $10,000 goes to the wall. Because until you are a citizen, if you're a DACA kid, you're Mexican. And if you pay $10,000, and let's say you can stretch that over whatever period you want, you could stretch it over 10 years if you want, if that's all you could afford. And that still might get you to citizenship quicker than if you waited. I don't know how long the wait is. But then that would be potentially enough money that you could say, let's take down this $25 billion you're asking for the wall, because part of that will be funded by Mexico. Not Mexico, the country, but DACA folks who are Mexican technically. They're American in every practical way. And they would get another path, which is they could buy their way to the front of the line, essentially a penalty, a tax that would apply only to them. It's optional. They could go to the back of the line if they want. And you pay for the wall that way, and then Mexico pays for at least half the wall. The other way that maybe they could have a path to citizenship would be if they join the military or have been in the military. It seems like most people would say, okay, that's about as American as you can get. It's one thing that a lot of these DACA kids only know America for all practical purposes. So that's pretty American, even if the paperwork isn't there. But if you've also served in the military, that's really American. That's about as American as you can get. So that might be another pathway to immediate citizenship. I would be in favor of that. I think a lot of people would. So somebody says no line jumping. That's also what I'm saying. No line jumping unless they pay $10,000. I'm just using this as an example. Over whatever time they want to pay it toward paying for the wall. Because if you're paying for the wall, you're part of the solution, right? The point is you don't want these DACA folks to be part of the problem. You want them to be part of the solution. And if somebody has the wherewithal to buy their way in, and it's going toward the wall, they're part of the solution. Now, you could also extend this by having an app or a website or something where citizens who want to sponsor somebody can donate to help buy them into earlier citizenship. That money also would go toward the wall. So anybody who is in favor of, more security, I suppose, more Americanism for the DACA folks, anybody who wanted to voluntarily provide to the early citizenship fund, good. And the default would be they just go to the end of the line. Now this gets very close to satisfying what a lot of folks on the right want, which is in their feeling they're rule breakers, law breakers, and they have to pay. There just has to be a penalty for breaking the law. I always appreciate that about conservatives and Republicans. It's sometimes kind of a hard-ass thing. And there are lots of times when, if I were, in charge, I wouldn't go that direction. Sometimes you do bend the law. There's a reason that human beings are involved in interpreting the law, why judges have flexibility, why police don't arrest every person who commits every kind of crime. There's a whole bunch of human judgment that's part of the legal system. But Republicans can often be diehard, rule is a rule, you broke the law, you got to pay. And having the people who want to get a pathway to citizenship pay in order to do it faster would be one way that there's a little bit of a penalty there. So here's your optimism for the day. I'm not going to predict that things will go the way I'm suggesting. I'm just giving you a sense of how close things are. This is really pretty close to something that looks like it could be, a solid 70% of what most people want. And, by today's standards, that's going to look really good. Because right now everybody's getting 40% of what they want. Wouldn't you say? Wouldn't you say everybody's getting about 40% of what they want right now? Everybody's unhappy. Both sides are unhappy. But the president's offered a deal where people could get something like 75% of what everybody wants. It's a different 75 for everybody. By most objective standards, that would be a hell of a deal. I think they're going to have to still tweak it quite a bit. Quite a bit meaning a lot of work. There may be a lot of details. But it's looking like they can get this done. Remember, those who are saying, whoever gets this wrong, whichever side you're talking about, whichever side caves, they're going to pay for it in 2018. In the normal world, that might be true. But we don't really live in a normal world anymore. We've sort of left that behind. The way time has compressed lately, and once again, I'll use Mike Cernovich's example of, the Bannon situation was just three weeks ago. It feels like it was months ago. By election day, if they get this immigration thing sort of tied up in a month, and it becomes no longer a headline, let's say by summer, people are almost going to forget about it. It's practically going to be ancient history. Now, not completely, but it won't be nearly as big a deal as people think. If they can get it this close, it's sort of going to take it off the table because both sides have, a lot of ammunition on the same topic. All right, that's all I want to say on this topic. And I'll keep it, I'm going to keep it on this simple topic.